I'm not an author of Afro-Mingei. It's an idea. It's a proposal. It's not a declaration. It's a question. It's a pondering. But without Tokoname, I would not make the way I make. I'm no longer the same because I stopped in that port. So, Mingei. Let's start with Mingei. Kyoto is a good place to talk about Mingei. When I first learned the word, it's because I was introduced to Shoji Hamada and Kawai Kanjiro-san through Bernard Leach. The British would send scouts all over the world and would fund the expeditions of white men to go and learn about the world and then bring the world back to Great Britain and then travel the world around. What I loved initially about Mingei was that it was a way of resisting the outside world by embracing the things of our nation, of the Japanese nation. And those things happen to be objects made by hand, by everyday people, for everyday people, to do everyday things. This is my modest, humble definition of Mingei for tonight. Not everyone is a fan of Mingei. And I understand, because Mingei was also a way that the government and the bureaucracy tried to maintain traditional values that could oppress women, that could reduce the living wage, it was also a way to keep things as they were. And Mingei was also sometimes a way of the imperial state looking at what's happening in Korea or Taiwan and saying, those things are beautiful, they are also Mingei. So it's a way of kind of colonizing beauty in other parts of Asia. But that is not what I'm talking about tonight. But I want to acknowledge that Mingei is not perfect. It's a philosophy that we rub up against, like religion. The part I want to focus on or think about tonight is Mingei, or beauty as an act of resistance. In the United States in the 1960s, Black people up till then had been not given equal opportunity in the professional world. We had policies called affirmative action that allowed Black people to enter the corporate world, go to college, benefit from grants, military activity, get the same privilege as other Americans. But in doing that, there was also the desire for African Americans to be more like white Americans. Their hair should look a certain way, you should dress a certain way, you should talk a certain way, and that if you were non-conforming, then it would make things difficult. And out of that grew the Black is Beautiful movement, where Black people were like, no, I'm gonna be professional, but I'm gonna wear Afro. I'm gonna wear the clothes of Africa. I'm gonna change my name. My name's not gonna be Jane or Barbara. My name's gonna be Nakima, Najuma. I'm gonna have a name that is the name that I had before we were forced to be in America. Black is Beautiful movement, I'm suggesting, is a kind of beauty as resistance. Is enabling the continuance of traditional Japanese dressing, which is a way of preserving a way of being. That's important work to me, you know. So in 2004, I'm in Tokoname. I'm at a ceramic workshop for the summer, making some Japanese tea bowls. I'm 28 years old. I think I'm making the coldest Japanese tea bowl ever. Sato-san, one of the instructors said, you know, what are you doing? And I said, I'm making a tea bowl. And he said, well, why are you making a Japanese tea bowl? I said, I'm in Japan. I paid some money. I'm learning the tradition. And he said, but there are very important traditions in Mississippi. Your family's from Mississippi. Why aren't you making a Mississippi tea bowl? I said, I'll be damned. I gotta come all the way to Japan for somebody to tell me to go to Mississippi and celebrate the culture that I'm from. And it feels like maybe that was the beginning of Afro-Mingei. And it was that summer that I started thinking, how could I take the skill, the love of beauty, the sensitivity to nature, the deep understanding of Shintoism, that there's spiritual life inside of objects, the acceptance that some things might not be machine-like, and that machine-like does not mean perfection. I found myself aggregating values that would help me on my artistic journey. Those aggregated values and philosophies, those things were matured in me in Japan. And I feel like I learned some shit in Tokoname as a young man becoming a man about humility and about discipline. And there were things that I was interested in, but I didn't have a system of operating in discipline where humility was rewarded, where modesty was rewarded, where the goal was to be good and keep improving your life, not be good so that you can have a bigger life or a wealthy life. It was to be good to be good. That was a new encounter. And I started to see that there were values. Now I'm not talking about Blackness or Japaneseness. Maybe I'm talking about historic values. There was a set of values that my father's generation had. That was like, do good in the dark. What I'm trying to say is that I started to see more and more that there were values that were similar between my parents' life and the old life of Tokoname. And Tokoname was slowly becoming a place that no one cared about anymore. And that those honorable values didn't matter anymore. It was being left behind. And the rest of the world was moving on. Tokonami made dokan, and then the plastics industry put Tokonami out of town, out of business. You know, and that this was very familiar to me. Now I'm talking about the way that I understood urban poverty in an all-Black context felt exactly like what Tokonami was experiencing. That Tokonami had no recovery because it only had one main city product, sewer pipes. That Tokonami was in a land that was fertile with great clay, and the industry that made sense for it, that it would be the sewer pipe manufacturing capital of Japan. In the wake of industrial manufacturing were exceptional potters using that same material for another purpose. The reason I keep talking about Tokonami is because it's like Mississippi. It's like Detroit. It's like Manchester. It's a town that I understand because there are honorable people who no longer matter to the rest of the world. I'll be brief this time.
Okay.
Sorry. Why Afro-Mingei? I had a very clear understanding of what it meant to be Black in the world, but really to be Black in America. So in my worldview, I could only be myself while experiencing American problems. That who I was totally defined by white America. One of the things that I wanted to do when I was 28 and I came to Tokonami was I wanted to have another way of understanding myself that was not always in relationship to the challenges I experienced in my country. I wanted another way of being myself in the world. And Japan felt like a place where I could have a new freedom to be an artist before I was Black, to be a potter among other potters, to have a new language and a new discipline and a new set of cultural values that were not based on the construct of race.
Yeah.
That I could have a life based on the construct of skill. And that I could adopt values and not inherit prejudice.
Yep.
I think that Afro-Mingei for me is a proposal. This exhibition is a proposal. What if we sent a 28-year-old kid from Yazoo City, Mississippi? What if we sent him to Japan to learn ceramics? And then he stayed and he went back. And he went back for 20 years, 40 years. And he went back for 20 years and he kept taking the values and allowing those values to merge with his values. What new thing might be produced? So that's part one of the proposal. Part two has to do with Japanese gardening. You have a tree, then you plant new trees on top of the tree. I feel like Afro-Mingei is an opportunity to consider grafting, both for an American and for the Japanese. And that the grafting would allow us to preserve and continue. Preserve and continue. And that the old tree, it won't do this anymore. But it has all the stuff to support a tremendous amount of new growth. But the apparatus for grafting has only been capitalism till now. But I'm saying there's some other values some other nutrients, some other things in the grafting that could be extremely sophisticated. And I'm simply making a proposal for my life. What if I were to accept that I am grafted and that I have roots in Mississippi and in Japan, and that as a result, my fruit, the fruit of my life, look a little different. That's it. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's it.